Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm doing a little bit of a different video, no printing, no painting. Instead I want to talk about this printer I've had for a year now. I bought this thing just at the end of May of 2024 and it's now middle of June of 2025, and I've used this printer almost every single day. Over the past year, I'm going to say at least 350 days out of that year, this thing was running, and have printed over 442,000 layers with this guy. And get this, it's no lie, I have never replaced the FEP film on this. The FEP film in here right now is still what came from the factory, and I've never had a single print failure that was caused by the actual printer itself. Full disclosure here, I've had a few print failures because it was this guy that made the problem, but not this guy, which I find completely amazing. So in this video, I just want to do a quick kind of review, 1 year review of the printer, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, some of the challenges I might have had with it, and get into why I only use one piece of FEP film. What's going on with that? Let's find out. Okay, so I'm not going to tease you to the end about the FEP film. I'm going to jump right in right now and let's talk about that. Literally in here right now is the FEP film that came when I unboxed this printer. So before this printer, I've run multiple Saturn II printers. Before the Saturn IIs, I had Anycubic printers. I am no stranger to replacing FEP film. I've done it many, many times for mostly the reasons of when a print fails, it falls down into the vat, the bed comes down, whacks it, makes a hole in the FEP film or a big dent, causes you future problems with 3D prints. That's really my experience why I always replace the FEP film. But with this printer, since I didn't get those failures, I didn't get that situation where the bed comes down, bamps the piece that's still in the vat and causes the hole in the FEP film. I also believe there are a few key reasons. These are my thoughts. I don't know if there's any scientific proof behind it. These are my thoughts on why I was able to get so much life out of the single FEP film without having to replace it. One is I keep this in my garage. I just moved it for this video, but prior to me moving it, it sat where the day I pulled it out of the box and set it up over in the corner of the garage, it stayed there and I never moved it. To the garage, I keep both the temperature regulated and the humidity. So I always try to keep my temperature somewhere around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But in the winter, which my experience with temperatures is it's the heat isn't the problem with 3D printing, is when it gets too cold. So if you might look here, in fact, I'll just open this guy up. This is very recent here, this white box over here, this is a little heater. 3/4 or 80% of all my printing I did before I got that little heater. I did it without it. But again, that just helps me keep the temperature regulated without having to heat the entire garage all the time. The humidity at 50% or lower. So I turned it off for the video, but I have a dehumidifier running in here almost nonstop to keep that humidity low. Does that make a difference? I have no idea, but I have a lot of filament for my my bamboo printer, so I want to keep the humidity a little low. Another thing I do, and this is from day one when I set the printer up, I only use one type of resin. The same brand, the same type, the same color all the time. And what that means is if I don't have to do resin changes, I don't have to take the vat out, I don't have to touch the FEP film for cleaning. And additionally, I think that this FEP was able to last as long as it did was when I first took the printer out of the box, I spent a lot of time dialing in my settings, doing the calibrations, doing the little tests where you print the little part out with the little raised bumps and all those calibration things. Controlled temperature, never moved the printer, same resin, and a lot of calibration in the beginning. The 4 big reasons why I was able to get 442,000 layers. I mean, that's the thing going up and down 442,000 times, and it's still going. So a little over a year ago, right before I bought this printer, I was running Saturn II, Elegoo Saturn II printers. And they were fine. They were workhorses, but I had problems with them. But I had problems with every resin 3D printer up to that point, whether it was an Elegoo, an Anycubic. But then Elegoo came out with the Saturn IVs. They came out with the regular Saturn IV, which is this guy with the green lid, and it came out with Saturn IV Ultras. And I was needing another printer. One of my Saturn IIs was starting to go. I needed to replace it. So I chose the Saturn IV. And the reasons I chose the Saturn IV over the Ultra were, one, this is about $100 cheaper than the Ultra. And two, the Saturn IV Ultra had additional features that I didn't need. I mean, I think they're great features, but I personally didn't need them. It had I don't even know exactly how it works, where there's a VAT. I think it's the VAT or it's the screen underneath, one or the other. It tilts a little bit each time it does a layer. New technology kind of worried me, because the more moving parts you have, the odds are something's going to break more often. So it was something I didn't see a need for. And what's the same for both Saturn and Saturn IV it's the same resolution. These are 12K resolution printers. They have the same build volume, the same build plate. They both have the auto leveling feature, which that is amazing. And maybe that's also why the FEP film lasted as long as it did. It was auto leveling helps a ton. All the features that were most important to me were in the Saturn IV. So again, made my choice really easy. So the resin I've used in this since day one, and it's also the same resin I've used in my Saturn IIs, is by Sunlu, and it's a darker gray resin. And get this, it's water washable. So if you think you can't get nice detailed parts out of a water washable resin, that's not true. I've been using it for years and have had just really great, solid, amazing results. So on the software side of things, my slicer choice is Lychee. I use the Lychee Pro version. Pro version gives me some additional features. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a video on slicer settings, how I support my models, settings that I've found helpful. But I use a Lychee, and my layer settings for models, like I have my Ada Wong that I've recently done here. I set the layer height at a 0.03 for anything with detail, like the model itself. And for anything like bases, if I don't print those over on like an FDM printer, I will go ahead and print the bases at a 0.05 layer. They don't need quite as much. My opinion is they don't need quite as much detail to the base as the actual figure does. So one of the big changes from switching from the Saturn II printer over to Saturn IV, it uses a new G-code file called with an extension of .goo or goo. The other thing is the Saturn IIs always would use the anti-aliasing function in my slicer. This Saturn IV does not support anti-aliasing in the Lychee software. But the Saturn IV Ultra does. I didn't find that out until after I bought the Saturn IV and had it set up. I got a hold of Elegoo support, and they're the ones that gave me the information that this one doesn't support anti-aliasing, the Ultra does. However, not using anti-aliasing with with the 12K screen versus Saturn II with its 8K screen, couldn't tell a difference. In fact, the still prints nicer even without anti-aliasing. I have much less issues during the slicing process in the software. Saturn II with the anti-aliasing would sometimes take extremely long to slice a model. Not using the anti-aliasing setting actually worked out great. One thing I do want to mention though real quick with when you're slicing and making your G-code files that you go ahead and put on a USB drive and put into your printer is this guy. These USB drives that come with printers, these are pretty much garbage. These are super cheap, meaning cheapo, not inexpensive, although I'm sure they're inexpensive as well, but they don't last long. I've had so many problems with these things that I just don't bother with them anymore. I just don't use them. Rather just go out, get yourself a nice Verbatim, SanDisk, what have you, a brand name USB drive. They don't have to be big. 4 gig is plenty, 8 gig is plenty. You don't need one of the 64, 128 gig ones. Here's the thing with USB drives, they're all gonna fail eventually. Even the high quality ones will eventually fail, but these fail so much faster than a high quality one. Since all USB drives fail, back up your files on your computer. Don't just keep them here, because you'll be sad panda when the thing does eventually die. All right, let me get back into a little bit more of the stats on what this guy's done for me in the past year, and then I'll get into my pros and cons list. So like I said, 442, in fact, I got it written here, I've got 442,628 layers that this guy has printed. That's, to me, crazy. That's just absolutely crazy on one single FEP. A typical job for me will cover at least 50% of this build plate in here. And let me just pop off the build plate so you can see what I'm talking about. It's hard to do from the back. I hope I don't drop it. That would be embarrassing. There we go. So right here. Also, I think one of the big reasons why I've had 0 failures from prints separating from the build plate is this new laser etched pattern. I'm going to call it this grippy pattern. that the Saturn 4s have. The Saturn 2s had just more your plain metal, whereas this, like I said, has this engraved pattern. So for me, a typical print would cover about 50% of the build plate up to 80%. Very rarely will I print just one or two little pieces. I try to fill the build plate every time I'm going to run a job. My typical layer count will be about 2,000 all the way up to maybe 7,000 for super tall prints. Okay, let's get into the pros and cons part of this. Pros, it works. I mean, one piece of FEP film. I mean, that's insane. To me, that's insane. And I feel silly making a video because no one's going to believe me. No one. Why would you believe me? But it's true. One piece of FEP film, never replaced it. That's a huge pro. I mean, printer just works. I've had no software failures with this, no hardware failures. It hasn't made any funky noises like the grindy when the thing goes up and down, none of that. Screen here, I mean, it looks bad because look, I mean, I still have the little protective covering on it. The screen is never locked up. It's never done anything funky other than showing me the layer counts. It's cutting off the first 4 a little bit. So another pro for me for this printer was the price. That was $300. I think that's a fantastic price for the amount of printing I've gotten out of it already. If you were to ask me right now if I were going to buy another printer, would it be the 4 or the 4 Ultra? I would stick with the 4 because why not? Pros, of course, it's 12K resolution. It's got a nice big print volume. If you want to print like 6 scale models like this Ada Wong is, or smaller, I mean, this is a great printer, my opinion, a great printer for anything like 6 scale or lower. Quarter scale, I would just have to make sure that my parts are chopped up a little bit more. Now let's get into some cons. And there are a few things that have really made me grumble about this printer. For one, when I have my printers lined up, I have them in a row and I don't have a big gap between each one. And the layout of the USB port is right here on the side. And for me, I have to come in through the front and kind of snake my hand in to get the drive in each time. So I tried to do a big brain move and I tried to use a USB extender cable. So plug it in there and then just extend this out to the front and I can put my USB drives in nice and easy, right? It doesn't work. I don't know if there's not enough power in the port and the signal gets lost. I don't know the technical reasons. All I just know is it doesn't work. I've tried multiple good USB drives and I've all had the same problem. I've tried different cables, same problem. So unfortunately, I can't get away with a USB extender. So another thing about this printer I really don't like, and it shocked me when it happened, and I'll show you right now. If you look into the vat, on the back side of the vat, there's a max and a line. So the maximum fill line, right? That is a total lie. Here's what happens when you put the resin in and even come close to that fill line. This is what happens. Take a look at this on the screen. It tells you have too much resin in your vat. And guess what you got to do? You got to get in there and you got to literally remove resin. You got to scoop it out with a Dixie cup or solo cup or something and get the resin out and bring it down to the proper level. First time this happened to me, I just couldn't believe it. You can't even get close to the line. You have to keep the thing about a good 1/8 or 1/4 inch below the line before you're safe. So another irritating quirk I have with this printer, and here I'll show you here on the screen, is every time I go to start a job now, it's time to change your FEP film. When I saw that, I'm like, 65,000, that's nothing. Like, are you crazy? So the first time I saw the warning, it said 65,000. Well, that's nothing. Okay, acknowledge the warning, thinking it would never come back again, or very infrequently would the warning come back. Oh no, every single time I go to start a job, that message comes up and I have to say mandatory print, and then the print will continue as normal. So one other thing I haven't done with this printer is I haven't checked recently if there's any firmware updates. Some of these issues that I'm having, like the fill line or the mandatory 65,000 warning, some of that might be gone now with newer firmware. I'm also the kind of person that if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. So I generally don't update firmware very often unless I have a real compelling reason to do so. Okay, so earlier in the video, I said that I had no print failures because of this guy, but I did have print failures because of this guy. And I want to talk a little bit about what those print failures look like and what I did about them. So the print failures that I created were almost exclusively due to support placement, or the lack thereof support placement. Fingertips, when the fingers are down, sometimes I would forget to come up with a support on the tips of fingers, or the hair strands that hang over, and I would have like a missing fingertip or a missing piece of the hair. That to me is still a print failure. I can't use the part because it's missing something. But that's completely on me, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the printer or any problems that the printer introduced. Totally on me. And the last kind of failure was I had a power failure. I had a big job loaded in, and about an hour into the print, I lost power. Now, this unit's got a power recovery feature where when the power comes back on, the screen will ask, hey, do you want to continue your print? I chose not to because I was only an hour into a very long print, and I didn't want to run the risk of just having a mismatch when it started up again. So I just canceled out the job. But the failures I never have seen, like I said earlier, I've never seen the part come off the build plate. I've never seen layer separation, and layer separation looks like literally each layer is kind of like separated from each other, and it looks like some nasty brain fungal thing. I've never had any of that. And the only cleaning I've done of the vat itself is I've done this after I've like lost the fingertip, or I didn't get the hair strand completely supported correctly, is I use that built-in. And if you have a 3D printer, I guarantee you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a built-in little feature where you hit clean vat, and basically it just does an exposure of the entire vat for 15-20 seconds. And when it's done, you just take and peel off that layer that created on the bottom of it. And the idea of that is if there's any little particles still floating around that have settled to the bottom, it pulls it all out. So I've done that a handful of times over the past year whenever, like I said, I've introduced my own printing failure. So I'm guessing one of the big questions you have is, since I've moved the printer, am I going to change the FEP film now? And the answer is yes, I'm going to. So I have noticed over the last 2 or 3 prints that I've done, I'm starting to get some banding or some really exaggerated layer lines showing up. And I got a couple pieces here that I'll try to get close-ups on. But basically what I'm getting is these I'm going to call it banding, where you can start to see some of the layer lines in a really exaggerated format, and they're starting to actually where I can feel them. It's nothing that you can't necessarily clean off with sanding. However, if it were on a part that had a very intricate or detailed texture to it, you're not going to want to sand the texture off. Now, in all reality, I should have changed the FEP film probably months ago. There's no reason to run it this long, but man, I was curious to see how far I could push this before I actually had true issues. And right now I'm going to say that banding and those exaggerated visible layer lines, those are issues. But again, I just want to say 442,628 layers with one FEP. So I want to go ahead and wrap up the video with me giving some final thoughts about the printer. First off, I can't recommend this printer enough for the value I got for the money. $300, used it almost daily. Even if I had to replace the FEP film half a dozen times by now, I think it's still a great printer because I haven't had any of the other issues. I haven't had the print failure issues that are a result of the machine. I haven't had any mechanical problems or LCD screen problems or LED screen problems. It's just been beast of a workhorse of a printer. Couldn't recommend it more for that reason. Second, if you're looking for a printer that's got a larger build volume so you can do the 1/10 or 1/6 scale models, this is the guy that fits the bill. And it's green. That's cool, right? Because my logo is green and it's green. And hey, I also want to say that this video is not sponsored. Elegoo has no idea I'm making this video. The only time I've talked to Elegoo was asking them the support questions around the anti-aliasing slicer software setting that I talked about earlier in the video. So again, don't feel that this is some paid sponsorship video by Elegoo, because it absolutely isn't. But that said, if there are any 3D printing companies out there that do want to talk to me, emails down below. If you do end up getting this printer, just remember the 2 big things I talked about. Don't fill your resin up to the fill line unless you want to get in with a solo cup and start removing resin out of the vat. And don't feel you got to replace the FEP film at 65,000 prints when you can easily push it way beyond that if you don't have any print failures that would cause damage to your FEP film. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you got something informative or useful out of it. And if you did, consider leaving a comment down below to let me know what you thought. And I know some of you are going to say I'm nuts for leaving the FEP film in this long, and I'm going to say I know, I agree with you, But I got to a point where, like I said earlier, I had to push the thing to see how far I could go. Going forward, I'm not going to do another 442,628 layers with this thing. But again, again, thank you so much for watching the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.